Make your arm look like a man.
Flexicon! Flexicon! Gains in disguise! Flexicon! Don't put that on. All right, let's act serious. Time for a review of Flexicon. This is the ultimate training platform for those of you that like to train with the resistance bands. Kind of defeats some of the purpose of resistance bands. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit, not to bury the lead. But this, honestly, if you are into resistance bands, there is not, in my opinion, after using it, a better platform for training with some caveats that I'll go through. This is the Flexicon. Hey guys, it's Coop from Garage Gym Reviews. Welcome into the garage. This is the Flexicon. Now, I've reviewed a lot of resistance band systems, everything from X3 bar, which is this bad boy right here, to Harambe's. This is their new Cyber Plate, which is just absolutely overbuilt and sick, and just general resistance bands. Honestly, during the pandemic, I saw resistance bands just go off the wall because they're the cheapest way to get heavy resistance. They take up very little space, and I think they're pretty versatile. Now, there are some arguments around resistance bands where people say, you know, it's better for your joints, it's safer. I'm not really gonna go into those arguments. You can research resistance bands all you'd like. Personally, I train most often with traditional free weights or digital resistance, but resistance bands certainly have a place, and there are some people that love resistance bands. If you don't believe me, go on Reddit, go on Facebook groups of people that are into resistance bands and mention that resistance bands suck, you will get kicked out of the room. How do I know? Sam does it all the time. But this is the Flexicon, which in some ways is an upgrade over machines of the past. One of those machines is called the Solo Flex, which is well loved. It's not made anymore, but people still try to find it on eBay that used resistance bands, like these custom resistance bands, in order to add tension to bench and other machine type movements. Then you had Bowflex, which isn't resistance bands, they use power rods, but still kind of a similar idea. This is taking some of those concepts and combining them into one with the ability to use both two bands and your traditional loop type bands all in one platform. Now I'm gonna walk through, give you a full review, everything that's good about this, everything that's not good, and then at the end I'll tell you who I think it's best suited for. Okay, let's start with the machine at large. First off, in comparison to a X3 or Harambe system, something like this takes up way more space. There's no doubt about it. It costs more, takes up more space, all those sorts of things. But when you compare this to, say, a squat rack or a traditional home gym style training system that you typically see, it kind of is much more compact. With that space being taken up, you have to ask, does it provide the versatility for the space that's taken up, which I'll talk through. But what is most unique about this is the ability to have lever arms to attach resistance bands with full 360 rotation of the handles, which I'm a huge fan of. This is actually quite incredible. They have a patent around this. I would love to see this added because it is very well done. You can do this to it and a bunch of other stuff too, 2 lever arms. In addition to that, you can use resistance bands out to the side on this arm that has a sundial as well to do chest flies and things like that, along with a bunch of other stuff. But let me just start at the base. This is using a steel frame all throughout. It comes actually in a pretty small box that you have to put together. I did notice once we put it together, you have these levelers here that can adjust depending on where you're putting it. A lot of people are putting this in a garage or in a home, and your home may not have flat floors, who knows? But that allows you to basically level it. There is this platform right here, which is powder coated steel as well. They're using actually a very nice textured, I call it dragon scale powder coat. It looks really cool, feels really cool. It's actually very similar to what Torque Fitness uses on their outdoor tanks. And then some of the actual parts are powder coated with something similar, or they're using this sparkle flake powder coat here that kind of shines. Looks pretty cool. But the platform is really important because it's what you stand on to actually train, because you can do movements off to the side. It's just with enough resistance. This is 300 pounds, which for a lot of the movements you're gonna do is gonna be completely fine without standing on the platform. But when you start to deadlift, when you start to squat, all those sorts of movements being centered in the platform, you standing on this and pulling against it is what is providing the resistance so the machine doesn't topple over. But it is very solid on the bottom. Then to the sides, this is what you clip into. These are C-clips. Originally, from what I've seen online, these didn't actually have the ability to put a loop band through. They've since upgraded that. So now you can use both their proprietary tube bands like these, which you can use other brands too. I'm pretty sure this is done in partnership with a company called Body Elastics, which does a lot of band training too. But this attaches to this here or with your typical loop band, and you have multiple places that you can use it. One thing I'll comment on that's really nice that they did really well with this is pretty much everywhere that you would connect, whether it's this that's an adjustment point or it's these with connections, they pretty much all have numbers there so you can remember where you put things right in your logbook, and then you can use it the next time in the exact same position. But this allows you to hook on here in a solid place and then allows you to attach this to the arms. Now, one of the benefits with this machine versus like a typical band training that you'd use with, say, a bar, is with this, you attach a band to it, you stand on a platform, and then you curl or do other movements. The problem is, if that band snaps, well, you're kind of in the way of it. One of the nice things about this is the fact that the bands are off to the side. If for some reason they snap, which technically if you're lifting with bands, you should be checking your bands often, just make sure they're not lacerated or something. But if for some reason that snaps, you're not really in the way of it because you're in the middle of the machine and it's attached to the arm. Small point, but kind of nice. Now there are these hooks all on the base. There's 4 different ones, and oftentimes to adjust the resistance, you basically adjust the distance between the connection points, as you can see here. But those hooks are kind of all over the frame, whether it's on the back side here, they're actually on this mid frame here, they're on this top pull-up bar accessory that's here. They're also up here. They're all over. So you just have a ton of places, even on this side, where you can attach bands and use off to the side, which technically something else you can do if you train with a spouse or a friend is you can actually lift off to the side while somebody else is using a different part of it, because it's robust enough that it's not going to topsy-turvy. Okay, moving up. This is the skeleton of the frame that you use for attaching other things, also for these arms, but that gets me to the most interesting section, which are these right here. Let me get the bench down and kind of show you how these work. Okay, now this is a folding bench. This is an additional cost. Do I like this bench? No. There's things about it that are kind of nice. Now I review benches, a lot of benches, for a living, and I've used a ton of them. This one's just okay. I will say the vinyl they're using is actually a very nice vinyl. Same stuff we see from Rep, Titan, and other companies. It's actually a grippy, nice vinyl with nice foam. And it does fold up, which is kind of nice, but it's just not a very solid bench. So I would recommend something else other than this. Particularly unsurprising to most of you would probably be the Iron Master, because the Iron Master bench would actually work really well. Okay, these are your lever arms. Your lever arms have an attachment point in the middle. There's a benefit to this in that there's simplicity, that you don't have to adjust the backside of the trolley. It's just fixed there. And they had to pick a position, if you think about it, that's going to work for both deadlifts and standing overhead press, right? Because this doesn't adjust. So the place they put it is a little bit above hip height, which is beneficial for a wide range of movements, but can be a little bit lacking on certain movements. Now, once you get your bench located, one thing that is nice both for storing and adjusting are these right here. Pretty smart. These are chrome ends that automatically attach into a pop pin here. The pop pin is beveled, which is really similar to some benches that are out there. Say the Rep Blackwing that has the seat pad that you lift up automatically, but then locks when you go down. This is similar. So when you pull it up, it locks in automatically, and then you have to pull the pop pin to lock it down. Very smart, I like that. Then here's the spotter arm. This just goes up and down. Again, just to show you, on the inside, it's laser etched with numbers. You can see right here, which is very nice, so you can adjust the position on both sides equally. This matters both for safety, but it also matters for setup. Most of these movements, you don't start at the top of a movement. Actually, nearly all of them. Some of them, like lat pull downs, you eventually will, but all your pressing movements, you're gonna start at the bottom. So you need to set it based upon where you're gonna be pressing from the bottom from. So you can put it there and then bring this down. Now then, you attach your bands. Bands. Here, there are 2 loading horns. The loading horns have these metal chrome flanges on the outside to prevent the band from falling off. They also have like this Delrin plastic, which rotates, which should prevent any damage to the bands. One thing I will say, these, it would be nice if they had rounded edges on the flanges, if you think about it, you got bands coming off and on and everything like that. So as you take them off, you don't really want to scrape it against there, even though it's pretty sharp. So just something to be aware of when you're taking them off. I'd make sure to pull them all the way off because you don't want to cause premature wear to your bands. So you can attach these to both horns for double resistance. I want as much resistance as possible. Well, not as much resistance as possible, I would die. But one of the negatives with resistance bands, in my opinion, is that it's kind of the opposite resistance profile for hypertrophy that, according to studies, is ideal, which means in the lengthened portion of the movement, so like say your stretch, it's the heaviest. At the most shortened portion of the movement, it's the lightest, which is typically how I do my training. Resistance bands kind of have the opposite. Now, there's a lot of people that get really strong and big using resistance bands, so I don't think it's like a deal breaker. But one thing to note is you do have to get it really heavy in order to feel tension at the bottom of a lot of movements. And so that's why I'm using these bands, where at the top it's gonna feel really heavy, but at the bottom, I just want some tension at least. As you can see, one of the big benefits with this is being able to quickly attach and detach resistance. It's actually much quicker than plates. So if I was doing a superset or wanting to move between users or just, I don't know, a drop set, something like that, like literally this is how easy it is. And then it's lighter. Then it's all the way light. So you could attach a ton of bands on here, start with like a really heavy weight, and then do your set, take one off, do your set, take one off, and just keep going, which is pretty nice. The 360-degree handle is amazing. Honestly, it is one of my favorite parts of the units. It is laser cut with numbers all the way around, every 2 numbers, which is great. I love the sundial. Just this idea is extremely well done. Now, I will say one thing that's pretty cool about these is these handles also come out. So this is the ISO handle. If you want to use a single handle, you can place these in, which mimic more they say your dumbbell type movements. Not totally though, because you're still on a fixed plane. It's just you have an ISO handle. Then the other one is a bar, which you can place in on either side. It does rotate in the middle, and you can use this as well. Now, another pro I want to speak on is the fact that it is very quiet to train with. You can be quiet with a barbell and plates and dumbbells. You just have to be like kind of slow moving. You have to make sure when you put your plates on, you're very quiet, but that's one of the benefits of the plates is just that clinging. It's like, you don't get that with this. You could go very heavy, it's very smooth, and there's hardly any noise. So some people are training in a space, say an apartment, where they can't get a ton of equipment, say they're on a second floor or something like that. Bands work really well in that instance. And again, that's why this is the ultimate band training platform, in my opinion. And it's also very quiet. Okay, now I'll just show you a typical incline press, show you how it feels and kind of walk through it. One of the things, because you're not starting this movement at the top, you're starting at the bottom, getting heavy on this, it's just a little bit annoying because I want tension at the bottom of the movement. If I want tension at the bottom of the movement, I have to go pretty heavy, which means then getting into the actual machine can be a little bit of annoyance. One thing that you could do technically is kind of what we do with lever systems often, is you put something in between the spotter arm and the arm, and then when you lift off, it falls off. A yoga block could work, but it's kind of a small piece. So it would be sweet if Flexicon actually sold some sort of spacer you could put on there. When you lift off, it falls off. Something small, but I think it would be cool. So right here, as far as tension, like there's very little. Like there is tension, but you can see the bands, like I've got them at the farthest reaches. I've got one of their heaviest bands and then one of their second heaviest bands attached on here on both horns. So it's kind of set up to be highest resistance. I also have it set up where I'm on an incline, but technically it's not really that much of an incline because of where the arm is. But just to show you, get in here, set up, and then press. Now at the top of the movement, it is freaking heavy. Here, the tension is just very little. So it's like most resistance bands. The Flexicon machine isn't changing the way resistance bands typically work. It's just allowing you to use them in a different way. But this press movement, you feel extremely stable, extremely solid. The lever arms feel very good, and you can easily get through your reps without worrying about it. Let's say you fail a rep. You have the spotter pin that's gonna hold it. Now, one of the other things they talk about is doing speed reps. This is something that I think Louis Simmons at Westside Barbell popularized. It's for targeting your fast twitch muscle fibers. They say it's primarily for athletes. How beneficial is that? I can't really speak to that. It's not a lot of training that I do, but I'm not necessarily training as an athlete for sports anymore. But it is one thing that you can do on this machine that you can't really do as well with barbell and plates, and that's just fast reps. It's very easy to do that, obviously, getting in and out of the machine. The other benefit for bands is chest press movements in general with bands are often hard to do. What you do most of the time is wrap a band around your back and then a bar, but it feels just way worse than this. This feels actually very good. Okay, so I showed you a press. Now let's do a pull. Put these all the way up. They lock in. You can then adjust this arm. Now, you can use these for things like chest flies, which is pretty cool. The other thing that's nice, these extend out. Again, something that's kind of hard to do with bands, especially with the modularity and versatility. And then you just attach the bands to the C-hooks. Another way you can use these though, is putting them higher up on the sundial, and you can do tricep press downs and things of that nature. But you can also put them all the way up, attach bands and attach them to the arms, and then use the arms for lat pull downs. Let me show you that. Okay, so this is your lat pull down setup. Again, you're still using the 360-degree handles, which you can rotate. One thing I will say that's kind of annoying with the pop pin is when you're setting up for pull downs, whenever you want to set up and unlock them, they automatically go in. So you kind of have to do a unique maneuver where you're kind of resting them and then grabbing the handle. Right there. Okay, so then you can do your lat pull downs, which again, you're having the stability of the machine, very similar to like a lever system or a hammer strength lat pull down, but you're using resistance bands instead. Again, the same thing that you're having is it's lightest at the top, not a ton of resistance here, but then as you get further down, it gets heavier and heavier. You can do single arm, double arm, you name it, and then you can adjust the arms to go out and in for other movements. And just to show you a chest fly so you can see just how extended these bad boys are. Now this is one of their heaviest bands. For chest flies, one thing that is nice is to have some back stability. So technically you could put your bench back, use a lighter band, and then go for it. The tension right here, again, is pretty light, but man, it is crazy heavy at the end range. But you can adjust these for different angles, very similar to say a free motion arm on a cable trainer, but use bands instead of a cable stack. So what do I like about Flexicon? Well, one is it's using bands. So it's a resistance system that is pretty cheap. It is variable. So it's not just like a single weight. You can add more bands on it, which means you can progressively overload, which means you can continue to get bigger and stronger over time. You can use it in multiple ways. So you can use it for your traditional bodybuilding type movements, but you can also use it for speed reps if you want to work more fast twitch fibers, if you're trying to train more for sports and things like that. And they made it so you can use multiple bands. So they didn't lock you in to just use the 2 bands. You can also use a traditional resistance band. And some of those traditional loop resistance bands get freaking heavy. So for instance, here's some here that we have just laying around. I have some that are even like double that thickness. So if you want to get heavy enough, you can get pretty heavy. The other thing is the build quality on it is pretty darn good with some really thoughtful features. These arms are definitely the star of the show, which makes sense. This is kind of what the whole machine is wrapped around. The fact that they thought through having so many of these C-hooks all over the machine, having multiple weight horns, these handles that adjust 360 degrees all the way around, also are removable for the ISO handles to add the bar. It's honestly really well thought out. When I saw it online, I wasn't too sure about it. It's like resistance bands. Is this just another Bowflex machine? But if you train with bands, this is really the ultimate platform to do so, with some potential cons. And the biggest con, in my opinion, is that this kind of defeats the purpose for most people having resistance bands. The purpose for most people having resistance bands is what? To save money and to save space. It's like, how can I lift as heavy as possible, get as strong as possible, look as good naked as possible, in as small as platform as possible while spending the least amount of money? That's really what resistance bands are for. This is not cheap and does take up quite a bit of space. Now, I'm not saying it takes up as much as your typical squat rack, but it definitely takes up a lot more space than a band rack, a little bar, and a foot platform, although it does add versatility. Then the other con that I found is some movements feel very good. The chest press that I showed, I really like that one. The lat pull down, it does have a pull-up bar, which you can use pull-ups. Any like single arm movements, think tricep push downs, bicep curls, all those sorts of things can feel really good. But there are movements like deadlifts that the resistance feels so weird. Also the angle of the bars, also the height of the bars. They show them on their site and they show them often in some of their YouTube videos. They even look weird on the YouTube videos. It's just not a movement that I think this is designed for. Now, I think you can use resistance bands to do heavy deadlifts and to do heavy squats, but doing it with this machine and this replacing a full-on platform, it just, honestly, I prefer doing those movements on something like a Harambe board or an X3 board. It just feels better. And then lastly, the cost. This bad boy is not cheap. Do you guys know the cost of this? What do you think the cost of this is?
I'll say 2,500.
It's $2,000. When you think about it, there's a lot of steel here, there's a lot going on, so I'm not really surprised by the price. Now I will say that $2,000 does not include the pull-up bar. That's an accessory. That does not include the bench. So you have to factor those in. You also have to factor in, like, do you want more bands? Because it does come with some bands. Do your bands break? You gotta replace them. You don't really have to ever replace cast iron plates. And you're gonna want a bench. You're gonna want the pull-up attachment too. So all in, you're looking at spending around 2,500 bucks for an all-in setup. Which is kind of funny because resistance bands, the entire point of them is to save space and money. So do I like this? Yes, if you're already bought into resistance bands and you prefer training with resistance bands over free weights, I would say this is the ultimate way to do it. But for a vast majority of you, I would say don't adopt the system. Buy a squat rack, buy bar, buy plates, buy dumbbells, and I think you're gonna have a better training experience with those. But I don't want to discount too much. If you're into bands, this thing is really freaking cool. It's just, in my opinion, I vastly prefer training with barbells and plates and traditional resistance, and have for years, despite using some of these. All right, that's my opinion on the Flexicon. What do you think of it? Do you like bands? Have you used it? Let me know in the comments. This has been Coop from Garage Gym Reviews. I'll see you next time. Peace.